I repurpose everything. So I have doors and roll-up doors and glass storefronts. I have those in storage. I have buildings that have had a storefront on them that later have a roll-up door, and and I keep these assets and move around. A single door and lock set, it costs you $1,300. But to add to your deal, like I can show you, I have a property where I put in a food park, right? A food park is it's not something you can do everywhere. So it's not something that you can do everywhere. But if you know what you can do in a given area, you want to take advantage of that.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another podcast. My name's Julian Castle. I got Tom Mckay today. He is going to be speaking to us on the Rare Mind podcast, how he's gotten success. We try to bring on rare individuals who have a track record, who can talk about their experiences. So Tom started 44 years ago when he was 19, investing in real estate. He has experience in commercial, industrial, office, and houses. And he owns tens of millions of dollars worth of real estate. He receives hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of rent every single month. He's got millionaire students in his program, and he's only been mentoring for 4 years. So we got a lot to talk about. So Tom, thank you for getting on. How'd you get started in real estate?
Yeah, no, thank you, Julian. I appreciate you having me on. And this is listen, there's no better way to get rich than real estate. There's just nothing like it. And I was very fortunate that an opportunity came about. I bought my first property when I was 19 years old. And this is back in 1981. This is when interest rates were coming down from 15%, which most people cannot relate to. And in fact, I bought all the property I bought through 1981 to like 1990. The average interest rate was 10%. Like I started at 19, so it's not that I had bad credit. I just didn't have any credit at all. And so by the time I was about 23, then I did have credit. And the first really legitimate loan that I got from a bank, that I qualified for, was 9 1/8. It was 9 1/4, but because I deposited, I think 160 grand in the bank, they gave me an eighth of a percent off from my first home. And but yeah, there's just nothing like it. There's just nothing like it. So, but yeah, I'm happy to share. I've got a book, Wake Up and Smell the Real Estate, and my channel is Flip Anything USA. So if you need to, flipanythingusa.com will get you, or Flip Anything USA, you'll find whatever I have social media wise. And I'm not huge social media. I've got about 50,000 followers on YouTube, but really I just kind of focus on guys like you and people that are interested in making money in real estate. In fact, even all these signs you see behind me, all this stuff you see, that yellow phone that you see over here, that thing came out of, a house from like about 40 years ago. It's an old dial phone. And there's just so many stories. That private property sign is full of coals. That's on, actually, it's on the first piece of property that I actually lost money on. That was 80 acres I bought that I shouldn't have.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah. So I
Okay.
like people learning from mistakes I've made and mainly the successes, and try to, steer people clear of ever have any failures.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So Tom, so you got started 44 years ago. How do you find deals? And how did you learn like what a good deal was?
Sure, sure. So look, you know what? If I can share screen here,
Yeah.
I can really explain a lot in a very short time. And I can answer any question you want about just about any kind of property you want to talk about. But let's talk about how I got started, because I think that's what everybody'd like to probably know, right? So I'm
Yeah.
sharing a screen here, and now let me show you. Uh, this is this is so look, I lived in Lancaster, California. This is really a dump of a town. It wasn't so bad back then. It's a desert community where they primarily was an agricultural town. Now it's neck and neck with Compton, one of the most unsafe places in the world, because they built a huge prison out there. It's a suburb of Los Angeles. And so, anyways, so I dropped out of high school. In fact, this is my high school right there. That's the high school I went to for 2 years. Anyways, but I went to work for a cabinet shop. I worked for about 18 months. And My boss went belly up. It was very tough times. There was gas shortage. You could get gas on odds and ends. People that are my age would know what I'm talking about. But anyways, so was building cabinets out of my garage. Then I rented a space, and it was tough being in business. I went in and started, I had to live in the building where I was building cabinets, and the guy said, "Hey, you can't live here. I'm afraid it's going to burn up. You'll be gone." So I started looking for another place to live. So in the course of looking for another place to operate my company, that led me to this place that you see right here. And let me make the screen a little bit different so I can see. But it's not showing me how I can get down on the ground here. Yeah, here we go. So look, this building you see right here, this is an industrial building, and the reason, because how I got into real estate, this is how I got into it. I mean, I was already interested in real estate. I was dreaming, hoping to have property, but in the course of looking for a place to rent, the realtor Bob Dennis from Coldwell Banker, he pulls up and he takes me to this place, and he says, "What do you think of this place?" I said, "Well, it's way bigger than I can afford to rent. I don't, my shop's very small." And he says, "Well, how'd you like to buy it?" I go, "Man, dude," I go, "look at me. I'm 19. I got hair down to my shoulders. I look like a stoner, we would say back then, bloodshot eyes, because I was allergic to the sawdust that I'm cutting, making cabinets from." So he said, "Well, maybe they'll own or carry." So this was my introduction to own or carry. And so I thought, I can buy it, yeah, without a loan. He says, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, they'll carry it." I said, "Okay, well, so let's just." So I made the only offer that I could make. I said, "I got $500. I'll put that down as a deposit. I need 6 months to come up with the 10 grand." What I proposed was 10 grand, owner carry for 5 years at 10% interest, which was the going rate. And so, and then I sweetened the offer a little bit, and let me go back and share so I can explain that. So you see this painted out stuff over here to the right?
Yeah.
That's not the building I bought, but I had graffiti on this building. Okay. And there was a broken window. And so, I embellished and made it sound a little worse than it was. So in my offer, I said, $500 deposit, $10,000 in 6 months, owner carry the rest. And I said, but I need to have access to the property for the next 6 months. I said, I'll make sure that, that the vandals don't put in more graffiti, don't break any glass. I'll protect the property. And they accepted. And so in 6 months went by, I had lived in it. I had my shop in it. I even rented out a little piece of it. So at the end of 6 months, coming up with the 10 grand was nothing. I had it. I put the 10 grand down, got it, closed it. And the first thing I did is I ran out right front here. See in front here where that window? There used to be a big old for sale sign there. And it made me nervous while I was in there. Every time somebody pulled up looking at that for sale sign, I thought, oh, somebody's going to take it from me, even though I had a contract, And but so I go out there first thing and I go to wiggle and pull that sign out. And because I can't wait to just get that for sale sign. I'm tired of people walking around my building that I'm buying. And the guy pulls up and he says, "Hey, what do they want for the property?" He thought I was putting the sign in. He didn't realize I was pulling the sign out. And I go, "Oh, I just bought it. It's not for sale." And he goes, "Well, what'd you pay for it?" And I said, "I paid 110." He goes, "I'll give you $20,000 more than you just paid for it." And I was like, whoa, and I said, and this is back in 1981. That's like probably being offered, 60, 70,000 bucks. And I was starting a business, but it reassured me that I made the right decision buying that property. I go, God, I just made 20 grand. You know what I mean? And so anyhow, that's what really lit a fire in me. And then after that, knowing that was my newfound knowledge. And this is what you guys watch and understand. When a seller wants to sell and a buyer wants to buy, amazing things can happen. You can really do a lot. And so in a very short time, you can see I bought and or I wholesaled, as you guys call it. I just call it assignments. But I bought this property, and this isn't the order that I did it, but like this property I bought for 105,000, and I sold it for 220. And then over this one I went to buy. I actually just kind of flipped this on an assignment deal. I started to buy it. Me and my partner kind of had a falling out, and I said, "Ah, you take it. Just give me 2,500." He gave me 2,500. I walked. Sometimes you guys don't have money, and I understand that. I was 19, so I didn't. It's not that I had bad credit. I just didn't have money. So the next opportunity came up, or one of the next ones. This came up. These guys went out of business. It was a hardware store. Nobody could find them. I found them. So I made a deal to buy it while they were in foreclosure. I could not afford to buy it. Nobody would carry a note. So I called my old boss, and I got my boss over there, and I said, "Hey man, check it out. He owned a lot of property. Great guy. He's dead now, but a really good guy." And he goes, "Tommy, that's a great deal." And I go, "Good, John, let's buy it. We'll sell it. We'll make some money." He goes, "Yeah, I don't want a partner." And I was kind of like, "Huh? What?" And nah, he goes, "Look, I'll just give you 20 grand and I'll buy it by myself." And I'm like, "That's a fantastic idea." So again, this is what was my entry into wholesaling without even trying, right? It's just somebody said, "Hey, I want to buy it without you." And so they took me out of it. And so assignments are something I use as a fallback. I always try to buy, I always try to close. And, people, of course, my secrets to selling, I can't give them, or buying and finding deals. I don't give to everybody, but I demonstrate that I have them. And so when you come back in the sky here, among other assets in here, I bought an overpass before it was an overpass. If you can anticipate what somebody has and what somebody wants, that's the whole thing. Get in between, what somebody has and what somebody wants, and that's the money in between. That's what you want to be. So this is an overpass. I bought this piece of land right here, because people love land. I bought this piece of land it had a little house on it. I bought it for 64,000 and sold it for 290,000. And I had a property taken by eminent domain, but you can see that overpass that wasn't there, but I knew it was coming when I bought it. And I didn't know when, but it had been a long planned thing. In fact, you can see if you go far enough over, that's called the peripheral loop. They did two overpasses at the same time. See, that's the exact same thing, just out of
Can you
town.
show us?
Oh, yes, sorry, I thought I was. Oh, yes, sorry. I forget. You have to remind me on that. So look, the property I was describing to you is all these properties, okay? There's the first one I showed you that I bought. And in a short time, I bought and sold this. I flipped that for 110, owner financed. Other properties, like this one was the hardware store. I don't know if I showed you that or not, but this is
Yeah.
the hardware store that I tied up. Did you see that one when I was showing it to you?
Yeah. We saw
Okay,
that
so
one.
I didn't know how long I had to screw. Anyways, so back to the overpass. The overpass was a cool deal. I got this one. You can see the overpass. When city wants to buy something, they're going to take it whether you like it or not, and they did. They took it by eminent domain. But I own the dirt that one side of this was under, and I bought that dirt for 64,000. Had a little house on it, and so they took it from me by eminent domain, which I know a lot about fighting and getting the highest dollar for that. But anyways, so that 64,000, I got $290,000 for that property shortly after buying it for that. And then I didn't want to limit myself. I wanted to look at other things. And so I found deals like here's a little house, and I don't even remember all the houses that I bought in this neighborhood, but this is a good story because probably even though I bought that first building, I didn't have any money. I was broke. And so I knew that I could buy stuff owner financed if I had a down payment. And I knew that, that there's deals out there. And so I found this property after five other houses. Okay. Like this is one, I'll give you an example. This house here, I bought for $40,000. It's in an industrial neighborhood. And the, I could not afford to buy it by myself. So I had to get a partner, even though I owned the building down the street. I didn't have the cash. And so my buddy put it up, and then he wanted to keep it. And I said, "Well, we can sell it for 56. We got 15,000 profit. Give me 7,500." He gave me 7,500 and he kept the property. And so now I had 7,500 in my pocket. And I did that with several houses in the area. If in my book, I have a book called The Cockroach House. I talk about that one. But this one, after doing maybe five deals with my buddy, and maybe I had, I don't know, 20 grand at the time in my pocket, I got this one. And this one was a cool one for a couple reasons. I went to buy it for 34,000. I knew it was worth probably 60. But what I did was in the back here, you see this little concrete patch? It had this little driveway here, but it didn't go to anything. The fence used to go around this. This is 40 years ago, by the way. So I took the fence and same fence, and I pushed it in and wrapped it around, put a gate here, or this little piece of concrete where the car was, and I turned it into an illegal duplex. I took the laundry room and I turned it into what we call a mother-in-law's quarters. So I made a unit in the back in what was just a regular house. But now instead of 450 a month for this place, now I was getting 750. and I didn't want to keep it because I want to make money. I make more money with a chunk of money by buying and flipping than I do holding. And this is not the kind of property I wanted to hold. So I bought this for 34. I thought I was going to need a partner, but it was an FHA loan. And at that time, FHA loans were assumable. So I got to put 4,000 down. I assumed it. So I had a $30,000 loan and I sold it immediately for, after I did a little remodel, I sold it for 56,000. And now I put another 20 in my pocket. Now I have 40 grand. Now I don't even need my partner. And so from there, and I'm kind of talking fast, but I assume you want me to keep talking about the money's made, right? But
Yeah.
so in a very short time, I bought, flipped. Some I had to have partners with, others I didn't. There's the cockroach house. I bought the cockroach house for 34,000, sold it for 64,000. Then land, I started getting more into land. I bought 10 acres out here for 30,000, sold it for 165, and I carried a note, but whenever I buy and sell land, usually it's owner financed. And so I'll get as much or more that I put down, and then I'll carry a note for the balance. In some cases, I'll let them assume the first that I have, and I'll carry a second. A little precarious to be in if times get tough. But, and then out here, I bought 70 acres out here. This was a big one. And this was kind of funny story because this old guy, John Kiffmeyer's who I bought it from. And I go out there and I found 70 acres and I talking to the owner and he's an old guy, kind of crippled up, sharp, just super sharp guy, just super smart guy. And I go, I said, well, what do you want for this 70 acres? I went all the way up to the top of this hill. You can see a water tank here. And what was unique about this property, it had the highest point in pear blossom in this area. And there was a survey marker that they used as referencing all over the country, or all over that part of the country. And so when I went and talked to John, I said, well, what do you want for it? I always say, let the seller make the offer. It's a chapter in my book, by the way. Let the seller make the offer. And he says, I go, well, what do you think it's worth? And he goes, I think it's worth millions. And I was like, I started to feel like I was getting conned. And I go, well, what do you want for it? He goes, I want $2,000 an acre. And I knew that was a deal, no matter what. This is back in 1989. Okay, this is 1989. It's one of the last properties I did in that area. And so I bought it, put 25% down, 35,000. And I had it sold in 3 weeks, right? So I put it right back on the market and I had somebody who was going to buy it. And they were putting down, I carried a note for 295,000. I sold it for 520. So in the end, I think they put a couple hundred grand, but that put like, I don't know, 90,000 in my pocket. I had to pay some real estate fees. In fact, I'll tell you something I did because, I put a 10% real estate commission on it, which is actually not uncommon for land in general. But I put a 12% commission on this. And what was funny is the agents didn't even notice that I put 12%. I did that to incentivize people. Hey, look at me, get a bigger commission. They didn't even notice. They wrote it for 10% anyways. But I sold that property for 520,000, like I said, and I got a note for 295 that paid me at 10% interest. So that gave me 2450 a month income from that. Plus I had put 90,000 cash in my pocket. And, these are the things that you can do with land. You can do with anything. Land is one of the easiest things to do. In fact, many of my students in my class have made 800 grand, even $1 million now on a single piece of land, many, hundreds of thousands, because financing is crucial for a lot of people. And so when you can sell a property and you already have the financing in place, so it's very important when you make a deal, negotiate the best financing you possibly can in an owner finance deal, because the advantage that gives you is that you can get bought out and they can assume your note. So the bigger the note you create, the more cash they can put down, put in your pocket, and the less likely chance that you'll have to carry a second. So anyways, like I say, now by this time I'm a millionaire, and this is, I'm 27. I bought a new car. In fact, I'll show you. I get a kick out of this because this is a funny story. I'll show you the first home I bought that I lived in. First home that I bought that I lived in for myself right here. This is a really cool place. So look at this. This is a cul-de-sac. This is in California.
Can you show it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if I'm ever describing stuff. Sorry. All right. So here's again, look at everything's nearby, right? I haven't even
Yeah.
shown you the 100 properties I bought nearby, but there's at least 100 plus in this picture. So the home I'm showing you right now is the first one that I actually ever lived in. And where is it? Yeah. Oh, hang on. Right. Here it is. No, dang it. Sorry, let me do this. It's easy to lose track. There's so many of them here. I got to get my bearings. Yeah, it's back here. I think it's simple. Um, okay, here it is. Sorry. All
Yeah.
right. So here, this is the funny story. So I bought this property. I was 25 years old. And this was also cool because this is like my second loan. I actually bought a home for the first time. And
Yeah.
so I bought this home. And, and again, it was a divorce sale. And many of the deals that come about are death, divorce, retiring, people moving on. There's, depression, all kinds of reasons that people sell. People, just there's a lot of things. Anyway, this was a divorce deal. And so anyway, this is like a 34, 3,500 square foot home. I was 25, I was single. I rented the bottom floor out it has a pool, a sport court. Very, very cool. I got doctors and lawyers live around me. I mean, this was called Somerset, and you can see beautiful home. Well, a buddy of mine come to see me from down the street. I still had my cabinet shop, and there was a couple of old guys that were 40 years old. That was old back then. And he'd drive by and they go, hey, where you going? You got a job? And he go, no, I'm going to see Mckay. He lives down here. And Mckay lives here. And one guy goes, oh, he's got to be selling drugs. And the other one said, or he's got to have somebody backing him. They couldn't believe that somebody so young could live in this neighborhood. And so, it just felt flattering that I'm doing the right thing. And that's how it feels. But anyways, that was a beautiful home. And, I enjoyed the hell out of it while I lived there. But again, uh, I the idea is you can't even if you make 30% on your money, it's not enough. If you're making 30% on 100 grand, that's 30,000 a year. The only reason you're making 30,000 a year on it is because you got a lot of equity. Now that equity, you need to take that equity out and parlay it into more property. So I say flip just about everything. Now I do hold a couple 100,000 square feet of properties, but I have millions of dollars that I can reinvest in other things. So I'm constantly using money to flip. And now, so I started getting into land. So every one of these dots you see here represents 5 lots that I own. I probably had 60 to 70 lots. I built 3 houses here, and this is what really turned me on to land. Just for everybody to know, these are like 50 by 100 lots, and there's still some vacant ones you can see. And so this is like 35, 40 years ago. And I started buying up these lots. And so I got about 20 lots, and then I kind of was running out of money, but I was building homes, and I'd get $170,000 a home. They were 1,700 square feet. But really, I wasn't making 70. I was really making 50 on the home. I was making 20 on the lot. And so a doctor had seen how busy I was. He was somebody I did cabinets for. He said, I'll invest with you. So he invested $400,000 with me, and I bought up another 40 lots. And I'd buy, sell them for 30, pay 10, sell it for 30, pay 10, sell it for 35 or 25. You can't get hurt taking a profit. That's what I always tell people. You can't get hurt taking a profit. So don't get greedy. Just turn it. Let somebody else get a little bit of a deal too. But 1 month I sold 3 lots and I made 60 grand. And I said, I made more money in an hour flipping 3 lots than I did spend in 6 months building a house. So that was the last house I built. And like I say, I went through probably 60, 70 lots right here. And again, I just never looked back from there. But so that kind of shows you how I made my first million in my 20s in the 80s. Okay. And then I had a buddy that lived in Santa Barbara, and I found out he moved to Texas. And so now I can take you to Austin, Texas, and you'll see and this is where I reside now. And nothing's changed. You can see it here in the sky. All these properties, every one of these properties, I either have owned or have owned, and there's a bunch of them, and there's more than 100, right? And these are every kind of property. Everybody watching this show drives by every day. I've got apartment buildings I've made millions of dollars on. I've got industrial buildings. I've got commercial, every kind of strip center, any kind of thing you want. So yeah, you can ask me about any kind of, this is why I tell people, you're not going to find a better mentor than me, because I still buy properties that most of you watching can afford. And I bought 4 houses in the last 8 months. There was one that was just a little bit out of town that a little bit further than I like. So I like everything close. Like when I tell you, I can take a rock and throw it and land on something I own. This is how I prove it out. You can see everything is a rock's throw from each other. And, I bought, whatever, 15 houses in a single subdivision, and so anything you want to know, I mean, I'll
Yeah.
answer any question you want, but
Awesome.
but
So
understand everything is nearby. Everything, and I forget to share this, but everything. I want to make sure you see this. This is my portfolio right now. This is my current, not all of it, but this is my current portfolio that you see in this picture. That most of it, and this is the stuff that from where I'm at, I could walk to all of this in a single day, and and again. I used to have fantasies about, oh, I want to own a bunch of houses. Oh, I just want to flip land. Now, I like everything. I mean, there's like this, an industrial building, one little industrial building. That one there, I bought 3 houses for 129,000 a piece, and I held them for a little bit, but I sold those houses for about $1.8 million. And so I was only getting about 4,500 a month net off those 3 houses. And when I converted them into an industrial building, now I get 15,000 a month for that building. So I went from 4,500 net income to 12,000 net income. I get 15, but the other 3 goes to taxes and insurance, that sort of thing. And so, like I always say, there's no bad real estate. There's just bad deals. You can buy anything. Believe me, I've been in Compton in the 80s and looking at property, and I got an interesting story I could tell you about that too. But
okay.
but
Cool.
anyways, but
Cool,
what
Tom. So,
yeah,
so thank you. I appreciate it. So, yeah, this is a great look at your portfolio and what you've done. The way I'd like to break up this podcast is basically uh, first is marketing, right? Because you need to find these deals. Second is sales, because you need to negotiate these deals. Third is operations. You need to actually manage these deals, do the value add, whatever it is that you do. And then the last thing is exit, whether that's, you're going to flip them or rent them or, whatever. So, if I could, walk through, just kind of like how you found these deals and, just through the whole journey of like what you do. And then, what I really want to get into is the value add strategies, how you're able to find value where other people may just, pass by. Yeah. But so like, how do you find these deals? How do you market, to find these deals?
sure. Well, in all honesty, it's not a one paragraph answer. You know what I mean? Everything is different. In fact, this is why I have a mentorship. This is what I charge people for. But it takes a long time. I have over 600 hours of content now. And people have asked me, "Hey, you ever owned a trailer park?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." And then like a month later, I'm like, yes, I have. I forgot that I owned a trailer park." You know what I mean? And so in other words, this is 44 years. I remember almost every deal when something jars my memory. So in other words, if I tried to write a book, it'd be so thick nobody would want to read it. And so there's little nuances to every deal, right? And so you know, a I I think like what you've created is wonderful. You got a place where people get together and they're sharing and trying to, and hey, I got a deal, I got a deal, I got a deal. Okay, that's fine. So that going where you can get in something like that, then of course, number one is you want to be first. You want to be the first one there, right? And you want to be the first one there. And your only advantage over everybody else is you have to know value. I mean, there's no getting around it. You have to know value. So, and what's the broader your skill set is in knowing what value is. And that's what I teach people is I teach people to understand value, how to, and it's not like, again, it's not a one paragraph thing, but if you know value, the advantage is that you can say, yes, I'll take it like that. Right now, the next thing is you need to create a sense of urgency. Let's get this thing closed right now. In other words, because somebody's going to be on your back. Like, those of you that have freedom during the day, and this is something that goes way back even 40 years ago, but even more so now, people get to live at home and or work from home and that sort of thing. But you have to know value, number one, because that gives you the power to say, I'll take it. And the power to say, I'll take it, I'll sign it, let's get it done. And so as far as, I buy off market deals, I buy on market deals. I'm very good at when somebody's in front of me that maybe has already got a signed deal. I'm good at taking it away from them. Don't give them a break. Don't give them any more time. You know what I mean? Because I'm hungry. I'll take it. I'll close it. I mean, and I can, there's so many different deals where that is taking place. In fact, I can, I mean, what do you want to talk about? You want land? What do you want? There's
Let's
so
talk
many
about
different.
commercial. So let's
Okay.
talk about retail, office, industrial,
Okay.
any of
That's a
those.
lot. That's a lot. Okay. So look,
Yeah.
let's just talk about, let me think of a good one. Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. Apartments, retail, anything? What do you want, Doc?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it's just how do you find these deals, off
Eh,
market, on
the-
market?
First of all, I buy everything locally, right? I'm not
Uh-huh.
buying out of state. I'm not buying 60 minutes away. In other words, I like to be in an area that I know the area better than anybody. So if some yo-yo writes a letter from South Carolina or Florida in my neighborhood, uh, I'm going to be taken more seriously because I'm local. And so you know what I mean? In other words,
Yeah.
and there are things I teach people about how to leverage that and advantage that. But let's just talk about what's your biggest interest right now? Tell me you right now. What are you trying to do?
Right now, it's either retail, medical office,
Why
or
medical
just
office? Do you really care?
well, medical office have good tenants that they pay higher rent, and they usually spend a lot on tenant improvements, so they're very invested into the property.
Well,
Um,
forget that. Forget that. Don't even worry
okay.
about it. Yeah, because let me just say about medical office, and I got a friend that owns a kidney dialysis center. Okay, kidney dialysis centers are they're out there, but here's the deal: they're very good tenants, but a piss poor return on your money. You're talking like 5-6%. They can get a premium, right? Because they're COVID proof. Let's say, in other words, they have to stay open. People die. They stay open no matter what. Now, I mean, I think that particular pandemic was a hoax myself, but let's just talk about commercial, okay? Because this is really, let me just kind of get you more thinking in the terms that I think you should be thinking. So look, this is a building I bought. This is a retail strip center.
Mm,
Okay, let me get further away if I can. Ugh. Okay, now I bought this property for 2.8 million. It
yep.
was on market and it was
Hmm.
worth 4 million. The day I bought it, I made 1.2 million in equity, day one.
Hmm.
Now, this property is, you can see, it's in the middle of people, right? That's what you want. You
Yeah.
want to be in the middle of everything. Okay. And even though this property, the standards in something like this, I like to say that these kind of properties are Amazon proof. Okay. So when I say it's Amazon proof, I don't know why it's not showing me stuff down here on the ground. The reason I say it's Amazon proof, martial arts studio, beauty supply, local loan, bakery, these are things that Amazon can't kill you. And believe me, because Amazon kills businesses all over the country. Animal clinic, right?
Yeah.
These are these serve the community. Everybody's always going to go get their hair done, get their nails done, eat somewhere, all that sort of thing. And you're going to get a higher return than you will out of medical office. Okay. That's
Mm.
100%. And it doesn't matter that all these stores, they can have the exact same thing at my competition's place next door, a place to eat. Oh, it doesn't matter. There's different food. But it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't hurt you, you know?
Hmm.
And so think in terms of this and on this property, let me just tell you something. So, and this is very, very common, is when I make a chunk of money on a property, like whether it's equity, when I go to sell it, I like to find what I'm going to buy first if I can. And a lot of people foolishly put a property up for sale and then they try to defer the money, which is smart. I do it all the time. But you put yourself under the constraints of the 1031 rules, which in general, the most plausible, easiest one to do is you got to pick your property within 45 days. You can pick one of three properties, and you have to close it within 6 months. Well, I do what's called a reverse 1031. I go find the asset that I want to roll three houses in. And so then I go buy that property and I'll pay cash for it and it's in the name, or maybe not cash either way. I pay for it, get it in the name of the accommodator. Then I can take my time selling the three assets that I want to roll and defer all the cash back into. Cash goes to the accommodator, money comes back to me. But so again, let's get back on your commercial strategy and the stuff that you're interested in that. First of all, and you want to see, I have a medical office building. I can show you that too. Let me take you to one of those. And it's a beautiful building. I actually built this building. And yeah, here we go. Okay. So here is a medical office building right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and I have one tenant and they pay me $27,000 a month. Okay. Very, very nice tenant. And they've been there for, I think, 17 years. Okay. In fact, it's just beautiful, well located, good looking building. They shoot Botox and all kinds of stuff, and, and by the way, I also own and or have owned the three properties across the street. Now, this is wonderful property. It's what people would consider office, which a lot of people are told, oh, don't buy office. Office is scary. Listen, office can be scary because there are a lot of people that don't need the office anymore. But there's some people like schools, they have to have the space. They have to have the space. School. Okay, this is a school. This is a Montessori school I have right here. Okay, again, Amazon can't screw with it, right? I own this building. This is a flex space. Flex space is wonderful because it's kind of like a hybrid industrial and office, right? So I got 20,000 square feet, and I can have somebody that does, light manufacturing and or they can do retail. I had a carpet guy in there. I've got a nuclear physicist in there. I've got, there's so many different ways to make money. It's amazing when you become a landlord, your eyes will really open up, especially when you have a broad portfolio that includes all these different kinds of properties. You'll realize, because like your fear generally, if somebody wants to buy a warehouse, they're scared to death. Oh my God, that's a big warehouse, one tenant. They're afraid of the anxiety of what if I can't rent it? I'm sitting on this giant mortgage. Listen, warehouses are super popular. When I have a warehouse, I buy any warehouse I possibly can. You'll fill it. There's people that, warehouses are filled just by everything you can imagine. There's people that have businesses online where they just simply pull from a warehouse that doesn't have a sign on it. Nobody knows about it. But I don't want to get too far off. But so again, retail, office, I wouldn't tie yourself to just one thing like medical office or, you know what I mean? If you limit yourself, just be a little bit broader because, there's so many commercial services that cater to the people in your neighborhood that a lot of people say, I got to only find a duplex, only a duplex. So while they're wasting their time working on getting a duplex, trying to do a house hack or whatever you guys like to call it, they're missing out on all kinds of stuff that's all around them. So, restaurants,
Perfect. Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. Honestly, I've dabbled in multifamily, retail, office, medical office. Even I have some experience in mobile home parks. So yeah, everything is good. And I want to talk a little bit about negotiation. So you mentioned that you for example that retail building that you just talked about. You got that property at 2.8. You say it's worth 4 point something. So obviously, one of the most important things in real estate is you make your money on the buy. So you got to negotiate well. So tell us a little bit about how you negotiate these properties, or what's the best way to try to get the best you know.
You got to understand what the, I mean, on both sides, you got to understand what a seller needs and what a buyer, and also what a buyer, when you're selling and you got a buyer, also what they need. And because, when two people, you got a buyer and seller, they can make any deal. That's the beauty of real estate. Creative financing, I've done more than anybody, and super creative. Okay. When a seller wants to sell and a buyer wants to buy, they will work together. Number one is, when you go in, don't criticize. Don't try to beat up by criticizing the property. It's insulting. You know what I mean? Only see the good in the property, but obviously, you want to understand them to, like, let's just say you got a property that is a great deal and the seller is not, as a poor manager. They're a very poor manager. That happens a lot. They're a poor manager, so they're not getting the money that they should be getting out of this building. The building I just showed you that I bought for 2.8 that was worth 4, that was a poor manager. In fact, the leases were expired, some of them, some were about to expire, and guess what? All of them were below market. All of them were below market. And guess what? This property was this is kind of some of the secret sauce. I don't know if I'm going to share, but that property was on market. I took it away from somebody that had it under contract. And that's really, really, when you know how to do things like that, it's a huge advantage. It's a huge advantage. You know what I mean? But let's get back to negotiating. And so on that one, there's, because that's like a two-part story. So let's just go back to that one for a second. So the property I showed you, and by the way, you said trailer park. See this here?
Yeah.
Where this property you see right here. This property, this was a defunct trailer park. And I bought this trailer park for 200,000 and I sold it for $2.8 million.
To a developer?
Okay? Yep. Well, I'm a developer too, but what I did is I rezoned this property, and I rezoned this property for apartments. So I got a super high density of 24 units per acre. So when I sold this to a guy that wanted to put not tiny homes, but very small homes, look how tight these things are. It was very easy for him to get what he wanted, which was, hey, I don't want to put apartments here. No, instead I want to put small houses, right? So again, everything you do with a piece of property, you get a super high zoning on it, you can sell it to anybody for a lot of other things, because the higher density, they'll always be allowed to do a lesser density. You know what I mean?
I gotcha.
So again, there's $2.5 million made just on that one property. And again, I bought that from 5 sisters that hated each other. One of them was dead, actually. And, but I had 5 heirs. They were the heirs of property. 4 sisters that hated each other. Well, I made one of them like me, number one. And I worked on them to take their position. And then I'm like, hey, I'm your brother. We're in this together now. And they're like, ah. And then they sold me the property. So the rest of it. And, but a little, but who watching couldn't buy a $200,000 property? You could find a partner. Hey, I got a property. And at the time when I bought it, it was worth about $1 million. I held it for a little while, so I got 2.8. But my point is, if you find a deal that's good enough, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you can't afford it. You can find the money. Finding the money is not hard. Or the worst thing, you'll get John Brooks like I did. Hey, I don't want a partner. Let me just give you a big chunk of money and I'll take it by myself. Problem. So, but back to negotiating. When I bought that property, I had a guy that was in contract with somebody else for the 2.8, and I saw that it was sold. I didn't care, but I kept saying, hey, you close that thing, well, they're never going to close it. Nah, they're not going to close it. Why? Yeah, because they would have closed it by now if they're going to close it, and they're buying more time. So, I've done this a number of times. So stay close to the seller or the person, that's in charge of selling it. And then when there's a crack, you get your foot in the door. And then that's some of the stuff I'll teach you to do in the class. But, that's what I did is I got in with somebody that wasn't performing as they should and agreed, and I got them ejected. I jumped in. Now, at the same time that negotiation was going on, because this is interesting, and this is really something everybody should take note of. So we got this property, the property I just showed you. Where is that thing? Yeah, out here in Round Rock. So I want to buy this. Well, I didn't, before I bought this, I wanted to get rid of another property that I had because it was money, right? So look at this. This is an industrial building. Now you can see it's well located because there's a confluence of freeways. So an industrial building always wants to be near, they want to be near good access because trucks come in and out, in and out. You also, when you have multiple employees, they're coming from all directions, right? So employees that are coming from all directions, they need, hey, I'm coming from this town, 20 miles out here, 20 miles out here. I'm coming from downtown. So they kind of want it to be near a good confluence of highways so that they're easy to be, accessed. So this property here, and this is another really fantastic deal. I bought this for $240,000. Everything else was selling for 5 times as much per foot. But I got this for $240,000. And, some people were afraid of it because they didn't know what I know about, just phase 1 studies and asbestos and different stuff like that. Some you need to worry about, some you don't. But I got this for $240,000. Well, a big pharmaceutical company came in and bought this building for like a premium, like, $200 a foot. And then they bought this one for $200 a foot. And then I'm like, hey, over here. I said, I got one for you right here. And so I made a deal with them and I negotiated it up higher because, there's economies of scale. I go, you got the economies of scale, economies. I said, you're adding more property that it's going to cost you nothing to manage because you're already managing the 2 next to it, right? You follow me? And
Yeah.
so I'm educating them that they're going to save money by buying my property, which means they can afford to pay more for my property. Now, I said, I will sell it to you. I go, but I have to find something to buy first, right? So I'm keeping them in touch with them, interested. They're waiting. Well, okay, well, we're ready when you are. And I'm letting them know, hey, I'm almost done. I'm almost ready. Even though I'm like, shit, I got to find something. So what did I
Yeah.
do? That's when I found the building that I just showed you, the one that I bought for 2.8 that's worth 4. So
Yeah.
I made a deal with them. They paid me 1,725,000 for this property. Okay. That's $1.5 million more than I paid for it, or just a hair under that. I paid 240 for it. And,
Yeah.
and so lined up to buy that one, said, okay, let's pull the trigger, went in, they closed concurrently, sold this. I rolled my $1.5 million profit from this into the other. And so think about that. I made $1.5 million on this property. And the day I closed the property that I bought, I made another million too. Follow me?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm telling you, that's how it can happen. But you understand, you talk about negotiating. That's
Yeah.
part of the negotiating what somebody wants and keeping them on the line. This is yours. Keep your money for this. Don't use your money for something else. You're keeping them engaged so their money doesn't go. Because that's what happens. People, they say, oh yeah, we would have bought it, but we spent our money on something else. So stay engaged with your prospect, whether it's a seller or a buyer. On the other one, that one I just pushed him out, kind of like I said, this guy's a dud. He's not a performer. And then but I made the seller, if you close as you can get to the seller is the most important thing, as close as you can. Sometimes that means you got to go through the listing broker. Well, you need a listing broker. You need to make him a fast friend if you don't know him already. You need to make him a fast friend because he's got friends. He's got other friends with money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, his friends with money might not be as smart as you, and that's what you hope for. So, what else you got? What other questions? What can I
I
do?
got you. Okay, cool. So you've touched briefly, you bought off market, on market, right? I guess just give us a little bit more on how you find these properties because you're getting them at a discount. I just want to know, like how do you get these properties?
It's every different way you can imagine. I got one recently. I bought a house recently that had been in foreclosure for 2 years. For 2 years, they could not find, they have to serve. You can't foreclose until you serve. They could not find the seller. They could not find the owner. They could not find
Yeah.
the owner. And but they did get to seize the property and go in. They were, I snuck into the building or the house when they hired somebody, the bank, they're like in preparation to foreclose. They have access to it. They just can't find to serve to take them out. And so I go in there. I mean, rat shit everywhere. Furnished, great furniture everywhere inside this place. But I stayed closer to it than anybody else. I drove by it damn near every day. And it was because I drove by it every day that I caught somebody that happened to be there from the bank that came there to change the locks. And you know what I mean? So in other words,
Yeah.
it's not a glamorous story. You got to really work and watch the area that you're in. Like, when you go home, you take a circuitous route home. You take the long way home. You're driving like a spiral to get home because you're taking in what's around, what's around. And then when something changes, you go, that's different. Something's wrong. I remember I saw a kid crawling out of the front window of a house. I go, that's fucked up. We shouldn't be doing that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I look it up. Sure enough, it's this shit trash tenant. Got a hold of the owner and said, you got this shit trash tenant. The kids are walking in and out of the front window. And I say, I like the neighborhood. I really would like to buy the house from you. And they're already going like, yeah, the tenant probably doesn't pay on time, all kinds of stuff. And so I say, and so I'll say, well, let's make a deal. Don't tell the tenant because you never want to tip off the tenant that you want to buy the property now because and then the tenant. And so I bought properties without ever going inside, right? So in
Yeah.
other words, and this goes to the thing, you should be buying a property cheap enough that you don't even care about the little things like, oh, okay, last minute up, air conditioner's out. Well, there's 10 grand, no big deal, because there's a margin, there's a big delta there of making money. And so you got to keep your standards high for having a big margin. I buy stuff 35 to 80% under market, and does it happen every day? No, but I'm not one of these yo-yos saying I've done 200 deals. They're saying they did 200 deals this year, which most of these guys I don't believe anyways. And I'm kind of a fake guru, whatever, stalker to a degree. I call them out because I know bullshit when I hear it. And so when people are talking in terms of deals, and they're not talking in terms of profits, it's because the profits are so miserable. I've done probably 200 deals over my lifetime. Ben Malla, who I've had in my class, he'd only done 169 properties. But I said, Ben, what's the most money you ever made on a single property? He said, $13 million. 13 million on a single transaction, and
Yeah.
that's why I say it's quality, not quantity. But houses, you know, uh, getting to know the people that have property, right? In other words, this is the advantage you have by being in your neighborhood is you have the advantage of getting to know the people. Is it work? Yes. Does it always turn into a deal? No. And that's the difference is, if you've ever been a prospector for gold, and I have, you dig a lot of dirt. You dig and dig and dig and the dry hole, then you go to another one. But you know that, it's like another way I look at it is this. A ring toss. You ever been to a ring toss where you're throwing a ring around a bottle at a carnival?
Mhm.
Well, the bottles are just about the exact same size as the ring. They rarely go over. But the fact is, if you get 100 rings, you're going to get a couple of ringers, right? You know what I mean? Even
Yeah.
if you don't know how to throw basketball, you throw it long enough, you're going to get a swish. You know what I mean? You're going to.
Uh-huh.
So for it's you just have to be absolutely unstoppable and relentless in your search and looking. And it does get easier because you'll develop a sixth sense for finding deals. And I tell people, it's like, I get people to try to see real estate through my eyes. It's kind of like the Matrix, pretty soon, you'll see things in ones and zeros, but it's different than that. But the analogy is you'll be able to identify things quicker and easier. So I feel like I'm not answering your question. What else can I do for you?
No, amazing, amazing. Cool. So, all right. So let's talk about operations. So you buy a property. Now you got to do the value add. Can you tell us some of like your best value add strategies uh, on different deals that you've done that you've been
Sure.
able to add a lot of value to the you know to the property value or to the income?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, listen, I am carpenter. And I showed you the other day. I walked you through when we were talking with earlier, right? I think I did. Did I
Yeah,
walk
yeah,
you
yeah.
back? Yeah, I had guys working I had to check into. So is, I repurpose everything. So I have doors and roll-up doors and glass storefronts. I have those in storage. I have buildings that have had a storefront on them that later have a roll-up door, and and I keep these assets and move around. A single door and lock set, it costs you $1,300. But to add to your deal, like I can show you, I have a property where I put in a food park, right? A food park is it's not something you can do everywhere. So it's not something that you can do everywhere. But if you know what you can do in a given area, you want to take advantage of that. And in my case, right here, this is a property. This is an elementary school, by the way. And this goes back to, like I say, every negotiation is different. And really that story is alone, but this is a prime corner. Now, when I bought this property, I knew that this thoroughfare was going to disappear. In other words, it was blocked. It was a dead end. Well, now it goes straight through to another major thoroughfare. So you see, I'm between two major freeways here and another one here. And so, what were we talking about? We have negotiations. What were we?
No, we were talking about value add strategies.
Sure. So this was an elementary school. Let's start with that. This was an elementary school. It wasn't, you can kind of see this is where the bus would park, and faculty would park where these cars are. This used to be a gym. You can kind of see where a drain was, but this used to be the gym. They tore that down before I bought it. Well, on this one, it was a school, so it had classrooms, right? Classrooms are 30 by 25, 750 square feet. That's what an average classroom is in a school. And so that's not the ideal size for an office, but it's not bad. The hallway was a little wide. And so what's the value add in there? They got to have power. A classroom only has 110 volt plug behind the teacher. That's the old school way. There's not another plug in the whole room. It's just that one. So how do I put electricity around this room? Well, you can buy 1-inch nail on. It's kind of like a stud, but you nail that on the blocks all the way around, and now you can run 110. You can put plugs around the room. Put in Wi-Fi. I mean, at the time on some of these buildings, you had to have a direct line. So you run your Cat 5. So everybody's got Cat 5 in there. And now you repurpose what was a school. In this case, I turned it into a software office. But also at later, because now I have extra land, right? I have land that, it's always wonderful when you buy a property that has extra land. Okay. Like in the case on this property here, I turn this into an office. I have a CrossFit gym here. I have a jiu-jitsu studio here. And then here I have an insurance building. But again, so some of these I'm torn out the walls in between to make a bigger space to accommodate that tenant. But in other words, it was no longer only good for a school. Now, also you can see I got a food park here. These are food trailers. Now this park had those kind of classrooms, the modular classrooms they put on schools, like a double wide. So I had power. Well, I'm taking advantage of that power. And now I'm powering up food trucks and food trailers. And I'm getting a lot of rent now for these trailers that surround me on the land that otherwise would just sit there, where, most people would be like, when they go to sell it, they go, well, you got land that you can do further development on. And that has that option, but also I'm bringing in income from it. I've also had similar properties to this where you got that extra land. That land is worth something if you can bring power to it. I've had guys that are building homes in the area. They need a construction yard for like tearing down forms. I had a guy that all they would do, they gave me $750 a month for a very small yard, and all they did was bring in studs that had nails in them, and then they had their guys there just pulling nails, cleaning the lumber, stacking it so it doesn't warp, so that they can go and they can, frame the foundation to pour concrete, somewhere else. And so the little value adds, I can show you, I'll show you a restaurant that was a major value add, actually. This is
Okay.
really a good, it's another good story too, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
So, so look, and by the way, when I tell people about buying locally, I talk about what I call it a real estate barbell. And the reason is it starts to look like a barbell when you buy properties all around your home, and then you buy properties, in this case, all around my work, my office was here. Then you'll end up buying a string of properties in between. You know what I mean? So it ends up looking like, the bar and then, the weight on each end, that cluster. But uh, so on this, yeah, restaurant. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So look,
Yeah.
here's a restaurant I bought. Now, this was a nasty, they'd been around for many, many years. It was called Casa Danielle for about 30 years. And people were getting old, and they rented it out to another company, another restaurant, right? Another Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
And the guy that owned it, he was getting old. He was doing a poor job running it. It was so nasty that when you walked into this place, your feet would stick to the carpet. Okay. If you can imagine how nasty
Wow.
a property that is, right?
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, they closed up. Well, I own the next three houses in a row right here. I own or four houses right here on this street. I owned all of these. Well, one of my tenants, like clockwork, and all my tenants, by the way, all my tenants know hey, you hear something, you let me know. I'll give you a 5,000 or 10,000 or $30,000 finder's fee. Just depends on what it was. Well, my tenant walked from this house here to go get her lunch, and she finds a note on the door saying, "Sorry, we're closed. All right, the tenants have evacuated." I'm sorry, it said business is no longer open. Uh, Property is going on the market for sale. Call this number if you need anything. She took a picture of that, said, "Hey, Tom, I think I found something." I was there in a minute. I was talked to the people. They said, "Oh, we already got an agent." I go, "What's his number?" No for sale sign. Let me talk to him. Talk to him. I said, "Let's make a deal right now." And I'm creating a sense of urgency. Let's get it signed. Well, what's the hurry? I said, I'm leaving town. I like to get things done. I'll take it. And so what I negotiated on that deal, by the way, I bought this property for $720,000, and I got them to carry a note for 3%. I think 2.5 for 3%. And I only put $30,000 down. So I put $30,000 down, and I got a note for 690 or something like that. And so now what I've done is I tried to make it, generally people should know this is, when you put a note together, it's assumable unless otherwise stated. If it has an alienation clause, now it's not. But
Right.
I tried to get that, but the agent was smart enough to kind of put alien. I said, "I don't want an alienation." He says, "Well, listen, we'll make it assumable with reasonable approval, reasonable consideration." So I said, "Fine." And so I bought that property in 2007. And right when I went to sell it, the 2009 crash hit. That was fun. That was
Yeah.
fun. That was a hard one. Anyways, but anyways, I negotiated the deal, but value add, it just so happened this guy over here was building this. This is oh God, it's like a 17 or 8, no, it's more than that. Probably a 30, 40,000 square foot dementia care center. It's an elderly home. I shouldn't say dementia. It's not all dementia, but it's old people, for taking care of old people. That's why you see the building is covered, takes all the property, right? There's almost no parking. They don't need it because the people inside this building that
Can you
live
show
there.
us?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there you go. You got it. Damn it. Sorry, man. So the property I was describing was, here's the restaurant that I bought
Yeah.
right here. And I showed you this, I guess. My tenants along here, it was one of the tenants that told me, alerted me to it, made the deal. I bought this. This guy was building this. Now, this property is almost 100% covered with building. There's no parking, right? There's like, look how little parking there is for the amount of
Yeah.
structure that's here. That's like nothing. Now, the reason that is because these are old people that don't have cars. These are old people that are cared for by just a handful of people. So it's very much like a school, except they don't need a big yard because nobody's healthy enough to walk out and play. So when he was building this, I had already kind of fenced this, and I was tearing it up, and I was ripping out all the rotten wood. I mean, I pulled a rat, if you can imagine. in one of the booths in this restaurant, there was a hole and I saw a stick sticking out of it. I grabbed that stick and I pull out a rat that's about 12 inches long. I thought it was a stick, it was a tail. And so this thing was nasty. So while I'm fixing this up, me and this guy get to talking because I can see how crowded he is. He doesn't have any space. And it was his idea. I said, man, I'm going to be working on this right. He goes, well, I need a place to stage materials. So I fenced the property across the front here so nobody could get in. We tore down the fence here. And then he's got this property fenced over here because, you know, construction materials, people steal like crazy. So this thing was just absolutely loaded. My parking lot was just stacked high with studs and trusses and all the components that made up this building. And because they had no room. So he was paying me $5,500 a month just for the parking lot. And now while he's paying me $5,500 a month for a year for this parking lot, I'm inside demolishing, demoing, you know, I had a wood floor I tore out, I poured concrete. And so again, I'm doing a value add, okay, a big time value add, because I'm scraping this, I'm gutting this, you know, rat infested grease trap. While I'm doing that, I'm still getting $5,500 a month. And now keep in mind, I negotiated a note, a $720,000 mortgage at 3%. My payment is only $2,100 a month. So I'm making $3,300 a month on this property while the building is empty, right? I'm making it on the land, just on the land. So these are the kinds of things that if you know what you got, and this is the key, if you know what you got, and a lot of times you don't know until somebody helps you, like, and that's why mentorship pays off. Somebody shows you this guy, yeah, it's going to take a year. I can't afford it because it's going to take me a year to redo it. It's like, well, rent the lot while you're renovating. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so when he was done, I was ready to open. So he wrapped up. And in fact, he put in a beautiful wall for me. In fact, I'll just show you. Look at this. He did a beautiful stone.
Show us.
I got to show you. Yeah. There we go. Thank you. This is what happens in my class all the time because there's a lot of this going on in the class, showing people their deals and whatever. But in the end, when he wrapped it up, he put in a beautiful stone wall, really nice for me to look at. And furthering on the value add on this, by the way, see if I can get on the ground here. So I added on this property originally, this was parking. People would park. See these, I added 100 seats to this restaurant.
Yeah.
That's gold. That is money. Okay. So this, people would park, people would just pull in here and park here in the front. And so you had 3 or 4 cars parking here when, like, damn, you could have 100 more chairs. So I got rid of that parking. I poured the slab, I fenced it in, and now this became open seating. Okay. You know, I popped it out here into the parking lot a little bit more. I made this was actually a little bit smaller too. I extended this out a little bit. And so I put more outside seats. And look at this tree. This tree's like, it's like 14 feet in diameter. You know, you got this beautiful asset. I mean, trees are assets. And so, and the other thing is understand what you got. You know, this is a place that there's thousands of homes, or I should say condos and apartments here. It's a very, very deep neighborhood. So people can walk to this place. So now it's pet friendly. People can walk their dog and have a drink and that sort of thing. So yeah, but you know, this thing here, like I say, added 100 seats in the front, big value add there, really made, you know, the property worth more. And then of course I was sustained with $5,500 a month with only a $2,100 mortgage because of the interest rate that was negotiated. So all those things come into play, you know, so when you think about value add, think about the financing that you put in place for somebody else to take over. So selling this in 2009 was not easy because the banks had shut down. I mean, almost nobody could borrow money. And restaurateurs, their name is mud already. So when I put this together, I was able to say, here, give me 200 grand. What did I sold for 930? Give me 200 grand and you can take over the note, and done.
Okay. Amazing. Okay. That's incredible. I love it. I love all of these different stories about value add. So cool. Now tell us a little bit about your success stories with your students.
Oh
Uh,
gosh, thanks.
yeah.
Yeah, I love talking about that. I love talking about
Tell
that.
us tell us where they were, like what were they doing when they got here, how fast they got the deal, and then how long did
Sure.
it take for them to, eventually exit or keep, the deal.
Yeah. So look, I'm going back to share a screen again because this is the easiest way. They can kind of tell you for themselves. So, so like, look at this is a recent student right here. This is Shane. Okay,
Yeah.
Shane had made. He did first deal he made 13,000. Second deal he made 110. Third deal he made about 120. 7 months. 7 months. So I love this just because you get a sense of the
Yes,
people.
I'm close on it now. I'm painting now and don't have probably another 3 weeks and it will be listed. Should make at least 100.
And so this is a guy that didn't know anything really about real estate or investing, and he not a particularly high income guy either. And I mean, and just here's the assets he bought. You've already made over 100 grand between two deals, and you've got another one you've already got under contract, or you purchased, so you might make another 100,000 on, correct?
Yes, I'm close on it now. I'm painting now and don't have probably another 3 weeks and it will be listed.
And he made about, I think, 140 on that. So you got a guy that made 250,000 in less than a year. And I'll tell you, I got a letter from him just recently, and he said, "Tom, I got to tell you, thank you so much." He's up to about 500,000, by the way. And him and his wife, and we're not talking heavy stuff. We're talking about cleaning the windows and painting the interior, not heavy lift stuff at all. And but again, it's just applying the fundamentals that I'm teaching and what I'm telling you about too, knowing value. And there's other secret sauce stuff, but and there's things that you encounter along the way. But so there's a guy right there, less than 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, maybe now. He's about 500,000 profit. This is a great guy. This is a storm chaser.
Just getting in contact with you and your mentorship. I've done probably 10 to 12 flips and just rolled those revenues ahead. We're doing 4 of them as we speak. And again, those revenues will be rolled right into another commercial deal. I'm bird dogging. I'm looking at very, very aggressively right now for another deal like this one.
Hey, Tom here. So let's talk about this deal he got. He got a $3.5 million building for $975,000. This thing is like a mile from the Kentucky International Airport. It's across the street from big box stores like what's the Burlington Coat Factory and a bunch of other stuff. He made $2.5 million the day he got this. This one, it's a legacy property. One of his grandkids was so excited, he made a TikTok video about it. You know what I mean? And, and this is most guys that get in my class, they're afraid of commercial because it's unknown to them, right? And so when you got somebody you can talk to, and this is like inside the mentorship, and there's Shane right there, and there's other millionaires in here too. And this is the other thing. You see this is a text, right? I go through hundreds of texts with my students every week, because having somebody, to help walk you through it and take you through it. But I want to show you this on this building. He got this building here, 19,000 feet, 5,000 square feet right here of metal building, holds fireworks, and then there's more that's not in the picture. But these are success stories. And I can show you little ones. I can show you big ones. Here's a guy, Eric, in my class, and he made a thoughtful video. And
hey Tom, it's Eric.
but I'll just hasten what he's going to tell you. He made $800,000 on a trailer park, and he got 34 acres of land that's worth about $1 million. He got that for 140, and he did something. My student did something that I've never done. When he told me he was excited about, we were talking about on the working on it till he finally got it signed. I said, "Hey, what's the interest rate you got?" He goes, 0. I go, 0% interest rate. You're kidding me. I go, how the hell did you do that? I go, how much you got to put down? He goes, 0, nothing down. So he got a nothing down, 0 interest deal, $1,000 a month. That's all he pays towards it. And every payment goes towards principal. So again, this goes to You know, people can't believe it until you see it. And that's why I showcase my students. And I have so many more stories that I haven't even put on here. But, you know, and any question you got along the way, you know, like you want to, here's really, and this is kind of your story, hopefully, Julian, what I want to see happen for you is this is Rich in my class. I'll just, this one gets to the point pretty quick here. So Rich here had picked up a couple of properties, made like 100 or so on the first one, about 100.5 on the second one, and then damn near 800,000 on the third one, right?
Yeah.
His income from what was his part-time side hustle, if you want to call it that, now exceeds or matches his full-time income. Yeah. So at this point, in 2 years, he now has more money coming in from his real estate than he does from his actual job. And Rich is killing it because now he rolled those assets from those. Let me see here. Yeah, actually, this is also, I'm a contractor, so you'll see me do value adds. This is a good one for value add, by the way. Julian, I forgot to mention this one, but this is where I put a new fascia on a building that you can see from a highway, not too far away. But back to Rich here, what I was going to say is, you know, Rich, he's already made a couple $1 million, and he's probably going to be at about $4 million profit here by the end of the year because he's made another deal that looks like he's going to make damn near $2 million on. But with Rich, yeah. So with Rich, what I wanted to show you is so he rolled the assets from those lands, and like I was describing with the 1031, Rich witnessed, you kind of got, and he was able to show you this.
Yeah, guys, for whoever's watching and listening to the podcast, and you know, there's going to be a YouTube video on here, so you guys should watch the YouTube video so you get to see everything that he's been showing us. If you're listening just to the audio,
are getting cash flow from that have.
Yeah. So look, I took Rich for a tour of some of my assets,
Of the assets
and this was very motivating for him.
Houses that you're flipping, warehouses that you are getting cash flow from that have really great tenants.
These are my assets here. Some of them.
So spent about 3 hours on the road just checking out the properties, and a lot of the time was just looking at the different details and the different, like how you're working on this house or how you were able to upgrade the performance of different assets that you really liked it.
A lot of people have preconceived notions how to make money on different things, and they I just want to buy duplexes or I want to buy triplexes. And yeah, so I tell everybody, man, just forget what you think you know, because you really, it's not what you think it is. And so now what I want to show you is Rich, I told you, he went through 3 pieces of property, made over $1 million cash, and he got to roll them. Look what he bought. And he's already got both. He's got a beautiful little strip center, and he's got a great industrial building that he just closed on just a couple of weeks ago. So he's already got his foot in the door in that. It's just so fantastic because, and so what I want to show you, because this is really important.
So being able to reach out to Tom.
Yeah, see, he'll tell you in his own words.
I would say I definitely recommend it, especially starting with the book just to get the foundation, and you'll really get a leg up. One of the things that Tom really does give you is his contact number. So being able to reach Tom, being able to reach out to Tom when you're in a crunch is very vital. And so you see that this is a stream of text that have gone on between Rich and I over the last 2.5, 3 years. And he's on the brink of, he's got a deal he's about to close. He's going to make more than $1 million on it. I ran into that on on the warehouse that I bought. I was running into an issue where there was an environmental study, and I was kind of freaking out about it because the bank was not going to want to do the deal because if it didn't pass the phase 1 inspection, they weren't going to do it. So I was able to have Tom on my side to help me walk off the ledge, I guess.
Yeah, and it's
that's awesome.
So that's the thing, Julian, is when if people are petrified of what they don't know, and they should be. Because listen, the worst thing in the world is, young guys, believe me, I got young guys like you, and you're doing well. And I know you're an accomplished guy, you're doing well, but it takes decades to learn, to know what I know. And there's things that a student can run into that'll really screw them over that maybe I've only dealt with that once. And maybe it happened to me in my 30th year. And so there's just some things that don't happen very often, but when they happen, you got to know how to deal with it. It could be eminent domain. It can be a lawsuit. bullshit. I've done an arbitration for one of my students, and he made 360,000 when I got through that arbitration with him. And so, yeah, it's, and like I say, and you're always feel free to reach out to me, Julian. I appreciate you.
Thank you,
reaching out
Tom.
to me.
No, this is great. I think we've gotten a lot of value in this podcast. Everyone watching and listening, and I just want to be able. I want to get everyone to have your information. Where can they reach out to you? What program you have, and all of that stuff. Because if people want to take the next step, towards whatever dream they want, and they think it's through commercial real estate, you're a person that can help them get there for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So look, let me what I'll tell you. Everybody watching here, if you have the means, if you have common sense and you really understand that life goes by quick, and if you get a bad mentor, you'll squander 8, 10 years and you'll be jaded and upset. Believe me, I got people that they're just so angry because they get into what they think is a good community, and then they find out they're getting advice from people that don't know what they're doing. They're pretending to know what they're doing, and then they make it, and then they act on that and buy something, and now they're really screwed because now they bought something that maybe they buried them for the next 10 years. So I'm just telling you right now, listen, flipanythingusa.com. Write that down. Flipanythingusa.com. Maybe you can put it on here for me, Julian, when you
I will.
edit this thing. Yeah, flipanythingusa.com. I've got a YouTube channel also, Flip Anything USA, or Tom Mckay, Flip Anything USA. You'll just learn a ton in there. I'm not the slickest, smoothest podcaster, by any means, but I guarantee you I'm 100% real. And like I say, 90% of the guys out there that you're the most familiar with are full of bullshit. It's just the truth. And if you can scrutinize them, because anybody that's really going to show you how to make money in real estate should be able to do what I just did with Julian. Go up in the sky like a satellite and show you apartments, commercial, industrial, whatever, houses, land, food parks, trailer parks, because each one is different. But getting the deal making, the main thing is this: you have to buy under market. And nobody should ever feel guilty buying something under market. There's now this controversy. It's becoming illegal, I think, to flip in South Carolina, and now, or not flip, but wholesale. But it's a lot of the bullshit tactics and the stuff that they do along the way. None of it's necessary. A seller wants to sell, a buyer wants to buy. You can make anything happen. Having a little guidance, makes a world of difference. I reference these belts here. I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. It's taken me about 9 years, maybe 10 years to get there. And I would never be as good at compromising a person's body fighting if it wasn't fighting with black belts that know way more than I do. And they're teaching me how to compromise and, evade getting in a bad situation. It's very similar. And the camaraderie is fantastic. When you're in a community, and I have a small community, right? I've got hundreds of people, but it's rare that I get more than 50 people in a classroom. And believe me, there is so much to learn. And when you see somebody doing something, making 100,000 or $1 million, and you're going, God, that kind of looks like my area. And you're in a completely different state, but it'll activate you. You go, I can do that here. And, you want to talk about fear of missing out. Every Saturday, it's like, everybody wants to be in there because they're afraid, and they will miss out on something. I don't even if I rare times that I don't do a mentorship meeting, I feel like I'm missing out. You know what I mean? And so it's just super. But I would just tell you, everybody, listen, you're this close. You're this close to making $1 million and changing your life because you're here right now with me. Okay, it sounds arrogant, but I can back it up. But you got to act on it. And I'm not saying join. I don't even let everybody that wants to get in my class. I don't let everybody join. There's a lot of dumbasses out there. I say it all the time. The masses are the asses. If you act like know it all, or I'm just going to say, okay, go fucking do it all. I'm not interested. You know what I mean? It's just you have to. If you have to want it, you got to want it. If you don't want it, and I can tell when somebody really doesn't want it, it's a passive interest. I don't want passive interest. You got to want it. And I don't care how much money they got. I say no to all the time to people who want to sign right up. No, because it's got to be like, you got to want it. And what's cool about guys that are young, that are hungry, I came from modest means. Maybe you did too, Julian. I don't know. But I'll tell you, the best thing about being raised poor is you have a driven desire to not be poor. If you drink powdered milk and free lunches in school and all that crap, and I've had all that stuff, you are like, I do not want to be poor. You watch other kids go to camp and have fun, and you can't participate because there's no money in the till at home for you to do that. So, but man, I'm having a blast, and seeing young guys become, 100,000-aires or millionaires or multimillionaires, and old guys too. Listen, I got guys 50, 60 that come in that have been doing real estate for 30 years, and they'll say, Tom, I learned more in the first 5 hours of your mentorship than I've ever learned from anybody else in a year. And they go, but the key is, and these are people that want to transition their assets from commercial or I'm sorry, from residential. And I said, why you own all these goddamn houses? That's a terrible investment. They're okay for making money, but you need to transition that residential into commercial, industrial, office, because, that's the bigger serious money. And then you can make just, huge deals. And generally when you start getting into that game, and I'm happy for you, Julian, I'm excited for you. I want to help you too, by the way, is that when you get something that's really great, when you sell that deal, it's like what I showed you, right? I sold that industrial building, made $1 million. And the day I sold it, I made $1.5 million. But the day I sold it, I made another $1 million. And in that land, that food park or trailer park I showed you, the land, you got a bunch of houses. I made $2.5 million on that. And when I rolled that $2.5 million into, which is now $7.5 million in real estate, that's all paid for, I rolled it into one building that I bought for $2.1 million. And the day I sold it for $2.1 million, the sister property next door, exactly the same square footage, sold for 4.2. So I made $2 million the day I realized the profit on the 2.5. Another building I bought, I paid $1.05 million. I was offered $1.7 million for it almost like a week later. So, so I made 2.7 million on the 2.5 million. It took me 10, 15 years to make the 2.5. It took me one day to make the 2.7. So anyways, but yeah, I really appreciate you having me on here again. Tom Mckay, flipanythingusa.com. And you see my book there, Wake Up and Smell the Real Estate, wherever it is over here. Get that book. It's been a bestseller on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. It's actually a prerequisite. And when people, let me just show you something real quick here. I know I could do that. Is when you go to go to Flip Anything USA, and I just want you to see this. Up here at the top, apply for mentorship right here. Hit apply for mentorship, or click on here to find the book, or right here, invest with Tom, or not. I don't care about invest with Tom. I don't really take any investors, very, very rare. But number one is you can get in a webinar or apply for mentorship. Those are the two best ways. You apply for mentorship, you'll have a free call with me. I don't have salesmen call and hound you, and I just don't do it. I talk to everybody or I let them in. But anyways, thanks a lot.
Awesome. Okay, Tom, thank you so much. I appreciate you. All right, guys. So if you like what you saw, you know where to go. Go to his website, go to his YouTube channel, check him out, read his book, and he's always going to be there. If you want to take the next plunge over. So yeah. So I'm gonna end this podcast here. Please check out other podcasts we have, and it was great having you. I'll look forward to having you in the future.
Hey, I should have you on. I'll have you on my channel. Yeah, I'll have you on my YouTube.
Cool. Okay, cool. All right.
All right,
Thank you, Tom.
thanks, Julian. I appreciate it.